The forgotten world. The galaxy had long ago decided what humanity was worth. Not much. 300 years had passed since Earth's first deep space vessel, the Tenacity, vanished beyond the edge of charted space. The mission had been ambitious, perhaps too ambitious for a species still learning to walk among the stars. When the ship's signal disappeared into the void, the galaxy's reaction had been swift and predictable. Weak, primitive, reckless. The alien coalitions that governed the known systems offered their condolences with thinly veiled contempt. Humanity's seat at the Galactic Council, already provisional, was quietly reduced to observer status. Trade agreements became extraction contracts. Defense pacts became occupation treaties. Within a generation, Earth was no longer a sovereign world. It was a resource zone, administered by the Varan hegemony and policed by their client species. Humans learned to live small. They worked the orbital refineries. They maintained the transit stations. They kept their heads down and their complaints quiet. Rebellion had been tried twice in the early years. Both times, Varan warships had appeared in orbit within hours, their weapons trained not on military targets but on cities. The message was clear: you exist because we allow it. And so humanity survived. Not thrived. Survived. In the sprawling megacity of New Geneva, beneath skies crowded with alien transport craft, people went about their lives with the practiced invisibility of the occupied. Markets hummed with muted activity. Children learned history in carefully edited textbooks. And every year, on the anniversary of the Tenacity's disappearance, a few dozen people gathered at the old launch memorial to leave flowers and whisper the names of the lost. Most had stopped coming decades ago. On the day everything changed, Commander Elise Okoro was standing in the Council Station's observation deck, watching Earth turn below. She'd been summoned for another meaningless briefing, some new Varan regulation about agricultural quotas or mineral rights. It didn't matter. The regulations always meant the same thing: less for Earth, more for them. She was 53 years old. She'd spent her entire career in what remained of Earth's diplomatic corps, translating alien demands into language her people could stomach. It was exhausting work. Soul-crushing work. But someone had to do it. The door hissed open behind her. She didn't turn. Commander Okoro. The voice belonged to Vren, the Varan administrator assigned to Earth's sector. His tone carried the particular indifference of someone addressing a subordinate species. The tribute schedules require your signature. I'm aware. Then why the delay? Elise finally turned. Vren stood in the doorway, his segmented exoskeleton gleaming under the station's lights, his 4 eyes fixed on her with patient disdain. Behind him, 2 Kesh enforcers loomed, their clawed hands resting on stun batons. I wanted to see my planet one more time before I signed away another piece of it, Elise said quietly. Vren's mandibles clicked, the Varan equivalent of a dismissive laugh. Sentiment. How very human. Before Elise could respond, the station's alarms erupted. The sound was deafening, a cascading wail that echoed through every corridor. Red emergency lights flooded the observation deck. Vren's eyes widened, his calm shattered. The Kesh enforcers immediately moved to defensive positions, weapons drawn. What is this? Vren demanded, his translator struggling to keep pace with his rapid clicks. Is this an attack? Elise's heart hammered. She turned back to the observation window. And froze. Space was tearing. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a wormhole. It was something else entirely, a fracture in reality itself, spreading like cracks across black ice. Light spilled from the wound, not the light of stars, but something older, stranger, colors that shouldn't exist folding into each other. From the tear something emerged. The vessel was massive, easily dwarfing the largest Varan dreadnoughts. But it wasn't built like any ship Elise had ever seen. Its hull seemed to shift and flow, surfaces rippling like liquid metal, geometry that hurt to look at directly. Symbols glowed along its flanks, not painted, but written into the fabric of the ship itself, pulsing with meaning that bypassed language and seared directly into the mind. And then, cutting through every channel, every frequency, every screen across the station came the signal. A human signal. The transmission was audio only, but the voice that spoke was clear, steady, and impossibly calm. This is the ESV Tenacity broadcasting on all frequencies. We are home. Silence. Absolute silence. Elise's breath caught. Her hand found the window, fingers pressed against the cold glass. Vren staggered backward, his voice a strangled rasp. That's impossible. That ship is gone. But Elise wasn't listening to him anymore. She was staring at the impossible vessel hanging in the void, at the fracture in space slowly sealing behind it, at the future cracking open before her eyes. And for the first time in 30 years, Commander Elise Okoro smiled. The message. The galaxy moved quickly when it was afraid. Within hours of the Tenacity's arrival, every major power had warships en route to Earth's system. The Varan hegemony scrambled 3 battle groups. The Karathi Dominion diverted their entire border fleet. Even the reclusive Sil Confederacy, who hadn't involved themselves in galactic affairs for half a century, sent observers. No one knew what the human ship was. But everyone understood what it represented, a variable they hadn't accounted for. On the council station, chaos reigned. Diplomats shouted over each other in a dozen languages. Security forces locked down every deck. And in the central command chamber, Executor Tavris, supreme Varan authority in the Sol system, stood before a holographic display of the Tenacity, his 4 eyes narrowed in barely concealed fury. "How," he hissed, "is a 300-year-old derelict still functioning?" The Varan technician beside him worked frantically at his console. "Sir, our scans are inconclusive. The vessel's hull composition doesn't match any known material. Energy readings are off the scale, but we can't identify the source. And the spatial distortion it created." "I don't need a list of your failures," Tavris snapped. "I need answers. Is it a threat?" "Unknown, sir." "Then make it known." Across the chamber, Elise stood among the handful of human diplomats who'd been hastily summoned. None of them spoke. They simply watched the hologram, watched their impossible ship hanging in the void like a promise made flesh. Beside her, Ambassador Chin leaned close. "Do you think it's really them?" "I heard the transmission," Elise murmured. "Same as you. 300 years, Elise. No one survives 300 years in deep space." "No one tears a hole in reality either," she replied softly. "But we just watched it happen." Before Chin could respond, the Tenacity transmitted again. This time the message wasn't audio. It was visual, holographic, filling every screen in the command chamber. The image resolved into a woman, human clearly, but something about her was different. Her eyes held depths that seemed wrong for human anatomy, colors shifting like oil on water. When she spoke, her voice resonated not just through the speakers, but through the air itself, through bone and blood. "I am Captain Amara Okafor, commander of the ESV Tenacity," she said. Her expression was calm, almost serene. "We departed Earth 3 centuries ago to explore beyond known space. We succeeded." Tavris's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is a trick. Some kind of human insurgency using stolen." "Silence," Captain Okafor said, though she hadn't been addressing him, couldn't possibly have heard him. Yet her timing was perfect. "We did not return seeking conflict. We returned because Earth is our home and we have been away long enough." The hologram shifted. Behind Okafor, the interior of the Tenacity became visible. Vast chambers filled with technology that seemed to grow as much as it was built, organic and mechanical fused into something new. And people. Hundreds of people, all human, all watching the transmission with the same strange depth in their eyes. "Where we traveled," Okafor continued, "time does not move as it does here. Space does not behave as you understand it. We spent lifetimes learning, adapting, becoming something more than what we were. Not through conquest. Not through domination. Through understanding." Another shift. The hologram now displayed Earth, beautiful, fragile, ringed with orbital platforms and patrol craft bearing Varan insignias. Okafor's voice hardened. "We returned to find our world diminished. Our people subjugated. Our future sold to those who measure worth in submission." Tavris moved toward the communication console. "Shut this down. Jam the..." The lights in the command chamber flickered. Every console died simultaneously, then rebooted with new displays, streams of data too complex to parse, equations that rewrote themselves, schematics of technologies the Varan engineers couldn't begin to comprehend. The hologram of Captain Okafor remained perfectly stable. "You cannot jam what exists outside your understanding of communication," she said simply. "This message will be heard." Elise felt something shift in her chest. Hope, yes, but also fear. Whatever had happened to the Tenacity out there in the dark, whatever its crew had become, they were no longer simply human. They were something new. And they were angry. "We do not issue ultimatums," Okafor said. "We do not threaten. We simply inform you of a new reality. Earth is no longer your resource. Its people are no longer your subjects. We have returned and we will not leave again." The hologram focused directly on where Tavris stood, though the camera angle made no physical sense. "You may attempt to destroy us. You may attempt to negotiate. You may attempt to ignore this message and continue as before. Her expression didn't change, but her words carried absolute certainty. None of those options will produce the outcome you desire. The transmission ended. Silence crashed over the command chamber like a wave. Tavri stood frozen, his exoskeleton trembling with barely controlled rage. Around him, alien diplomats and officers stared at blank screens, processing what they just witnessed. Elise looked at Chen. The older ambassador's hands were shaking. What did they find out there? Chen whispered. Elise turned back to the window, to where the tenacity hung in space, its impossible geometry reflecting starlight in colors that had no names. I don't know, she said quietly. But I think we're about to find out. Outside, in the void, the tenacity began to move. Not with thrusters or engines, but with something else. Space itself seemed to yield around it, reality bending to accommodate its passage. It was heading toward Earth. And no one could stop it. The descent. The Varan fleet moved to intercept. 12 dreadnoughts, each 1 kilometer of hardened alloy and plasma weaponry, arranged themselves in a blockade formation between the tenacity and Earth. Executor Tavris watched from the Council Station's command chamber, his segmented fingers drumming against the console. All vessels, he transmitted. Weapons hot. If that ship crosses the designated perimeter, you are authorized to fire. The fleet commanders acknowledged. Across the holographic display, targeting solutions locked onto the tenacity. Enough firepower to crack a moon focused on a single target. Elise stood at the back of the chamber, her heart in her throat. Around her, the other human diplomats watched in horrified silence. This was it, the moment Earth's impossible hope would either be confirmed or incinerated. The tenacity continued its approach, unhurried, serene. Sir, one of the Varan technicians reported, the vessel is not responding to hails. No evasive maneuvers. No weapons charging. Then they're fools, Tavris muttered. Fire when ready. Sir, perhaps we should. Fire. The fleet opened up. Plasma bolts screamed across the void, brilliant lances of superheated matter that could vaporize ships 3 times the tenacity's size. Missile swarms followed, hundreds of warheads trailing fire. The barrage was overwhelming, absolute, inescapable. Elise closed her eyes. And then she heard the technician's voice, confused and frightened. Sir. Impact in 3, 2, 1? Nothing. Elise's eyes snapped open. On the display the weapons had simply stopped. Not exploded, not been intercepted, stopped. Plasma bolts hung frozen in space like insects in amber. Missiles drifted, their engines dead, warheads inert. Around the tenacity, reality had become something else, somewhere the laws of physics were negotiable. What? Tavris stammered. What is this? The frozen weapons began to dissolve. Not explode, not fragment, dissolve, their matter unraveling into light that spread across space like watercolor in rain. Within seconds the entire barrage had simply ceased to exist. The tenacity continued forward, untouched. All ships, Tavris's voice cracked. Full retreat. Fall back to. The transmission cut out. Every screen in the command chamber went black. Then one by one they flickered back to life, showing the same image. Captain Okafor standing on her bridge, her strange eyes filled with something that might have been pity. We told you, she said quietly. We did not return seeking conflict. On the tactical display the Varan dreadnoughts were moving. Not under their own power, their engines were dark, their systems offline. They were being relocated, gently pushed aside by forces that registered on no sensor, positioned into parking orbits around Luna like toys being put away by a patient parent. Tavris collapsed into his chair, his mandibles clicking in wordless shock. However, Okafor continued, we will not allow you to threaten Earth. Not again. Not ever. The tenacity passed through the now empty blockade line and continued its descent toward the planet. As it moved, something extraordinary happened. The ship began to bloom. Sections of its hull unfolded like petals, revealing structures within structures, gardens growing in impossible spaces, architecture that existed in more dimensions than 3. And from within, smaller vessels emerged, hundreds of them, each one uniquely formed, organic and mechanical, beautiful and utterly alien. They spread across Earth's orbit like seeds on the wind, taking positions around every Varan installation, every occupation platform, every weapon emplacement. No shots were fired. No threats were issued. The Varan forces simply found themselves surrounded by technology they couldn't comprehend, watching ships that moved through space like dancers through water. On the council station, alarms blared uselessly. Officers shouted contradictory orders. Diplomats from a dozen species scrambled for emergency protocols that meant nothing against an opponent who could rewrite the rules themselves. Annalise, standing amid the chaos, felt tears streaming down her face. The tenacity descended toward Earth. As it entered the upper atmosphere, it didn't burn. Instead, it seemed to merge with the air itself, space folding around it like silk around skin. People across the planet looked up to see the impossible ship settling into a stationary position above the Indian Ocean, so vast it could be seen from every continent. In New Geneva, crowds gathered in the streets. In Lagos, in Beijing, in Sao Paulo, in what remained of London, everywhere humans still lived, they stopped and stared at the sky. And from the tenacity, Captain Okafor's voice rang out across every channel, every frequency, bypassing alien jammers as easily as breathing. People of Earth, we are the children of the tenacity. We are what humanity became when it was given time, space, and necessity to evolve. We learned to read the language written in the structure of reality itself. We learned to move through dimensions your occupiers don't know exist. We learned that power is not taken, it is understood. On the council station, Tavri stared at the image of Okafor, his entire body trembling. We return to you now, she continued, not as saviors but as family. We do not offer freedom. Freedom is not ours to give. It is yours to claim. But we offer you knowledge, partnership, protection. The camera angle shifted, showing Earth from orbit, beautiful and fragile and surrounded by the scattered fleet of human vessels. The galaxy labeled us weak, Okafor said. Let them maintain that belief if it comforts them. We know the truth, that humans do not conquer the stars through force. We reshape them through understanding, through adaptation, through the refusal to accept that anything, is impossible. Her eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching simultaneously. The age of occupation is over. Not because we destroyed your oppressors, but because we made their dominance irrelevant. They may stay in our system if they wish to learn. They may trade with us as equals. They may even call themselves our neighbors. The slightest smile crossed her face. But they will never ever call themselves our masters again. The transmission ended. On the council station, in the sudden silence, Elise heard Ambassador Chen laughing, a sound like broken glass and pure joy mixed together. Across Earth, people were crying, cheering, embracing strangers in the streets. And above them all, the tenacity hung in the sky like a second sun, impossible and undeniable and home. In the command chamber, Tavris finally found his voice. What do we do? No one answered him. Because for the first time in 300 years, the question wasn't what the galaxy would allow humanity to do. It was what humanity would choose to become.